Hello everyone. Welcome back. I have been working on this pattern for a few weeks now where you draw loops and you make this image that looks kind of like a Celtic knot. There's a little trick to it. I have it in another video on how to make this work, but I have upped it a whole nother notch and I want to show you what I have figured out. So this is the one that I'm going to do today. I started with the Celtic knot in the center. You can see the loops that all connect together, and then I figured out something else when I went bigger, and this is why I like to push the patterns to their absolute limits. So let's talk about the basics. What you're doing is you are building a row or a direction of teardrops all facing the same direction, and then you're doing another row facing down. So these are facing up, those are facing down. What you are doing is you are starting with a gap right over here, and you're going to draw it to the point. So gap to point. And then this point goes all the way around your teardrop and meets on the line. So gap to point, and we're just following the teardrop. And then we're going to go point all the way around to the line. And you can do this in a circle, like you can put all these basics into a circle and then flare them out, or you can do them in a shape or a wavy line. But this is the basic pattern. So you start with that, and then you're going to cross it over, draw a line, and this one is the point here, and that goes all the way around, point to gap. And this is a gap to point. Gap to point, point, loops around. Gap to point, point, loops around, and that's the end of that one. And we'll just take this one over too. Now what I have learned is when you want to add a second layer, a third layer, 16,000 layers, essentially all you're doing is drawing a line connecting to that, going around it, and going like that. So when I've started with my basic foundation, however I want it to be, I now can add more just by drawing the X part, right? It doesn't actually ever have to end in a loop. So start with a teardrop, draw a line to the teardrop, follow that line and follow the teardrop, the raindrop, and then cross over. That's it. And so I can really easily keep adding however I want to add, just by focusing on drawing these extra loops. So easy, so obvious, but it took me many drawings before I broke it down to the bare minimum of that's what I'm doing. Okay, so now let's get going on today's video, and we'll see how today's goes. Thanks for watching, guys. I figured out a quick little cheat so I don't have to pull out a compass and get all mathematical, is if I start with like how you would make a snowflake with kids. You fold it in half, then fold it into thirds, and then cut out a round shape, and then if I cut out the center, I make this ring. Now I know an equal distance of these 6 points, and then I can just rotate it and make more marks and everything will be all equal. So we're going to go ahead and use the same tool that I made on my last art piece on this one, but we're starting out much smaller with this one, so I think I'm going to start out with the center of this ring that I made. Let's take the center point of that one. That way we can start really small with lots of details and have room to flare out. And I can mark the center circle and where the 6 sides are. I can skew it and add 6 more sides. And now we're good to go. And I'll put 6 marks on the outside, or maybe 12 marks, just to make sure that it's nice and balanced and equally spaced as a good starting foundation. Now we're good to get started. I'm going to add teardrops in the center, and then I'm going to add teardrops on those markings that I had made before. And remember, we're not going to go straight from one dot to the one right above it. We actually want it to go diagonal a little bit. We want it to pull to a dot that's next to it. So let's start this pattern. We start with the line that echoes the teardrop and draws it to the point, and I'll do that all the way around the circle. And that just makes sure that I know where I'm going with each of these. And then I'm going to do the crossover loop. Alright, I already feel better about this. I feel like it's got more energy than just 6 points. This is actually 12 points in a circle, but we're going to keep going further out. I'm going to make a circle on the page just as a reference so that I can keep it kind of balanced. So I think what I want to do is I want to start with a dot in here, just a pretend dot, and then I'm going to pull it out to the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to take the concept of just making these without actually having a circle of dots to reference. So see how that fits in, but there is actually no dot that it's coming back to. Now I'm intentionally adding a lot of variety because I like taking these patterns and pushing them to their absolute extreme to kind of understand what's happening here. What variety choices do we have? I think a lot of times consistency ends up looking very elegant and beautiful, but this is just a quick little guide of what does it look like to have a tight little curl? What does it look like to have a long curl? What does it look like to have uneven, mismatched numbers of curls? And I'll tell you right now, I'm finding it interesting having loop with loop, and I wish there was even more loops of layers coming out. It would be really neat to have these loops really close together like petals of a flower. I think I like the big flare outs more than I like the little tight ones. And I kind of like when these X-overs are pretty upright instead of widespread. This is what I have learned from this pattern. Oh, and one more, I think it's really kind of cool seeing the stems, seeing these long lines tangle into each other. I think that's kind of neat and elegant. It would be neat to have a tight little flower and then a long spray of stems before the petals on the outer rim, or maybe even get rid of the outer rim completely where there's no loops. It's just a tangle of X's. So I always think that with these things the whole point is to just abstract draw without a plan, just go with it, and slowly through time you kind of learn what you like. But I also think that it's really cool to get into a slipstream where one drawing inspires the next drawing, which inspires the next drawing. And I think that happens through just earnest play and really being present and adding questions while you draw. And unfortunately, when you're talking about following a pattern very precisely, it can get kind of hard to do that. Okay, so here's my basic pattern, and now I'm curious what happens if I fill in the background instead of the foreground. This is always the moment that I think it would be nice to be drawing this on a computer because I could just click a button and make it happen. But remember, when you're drawing on paper, the whole point is enjoying the journey. So try not to rush. Try not to be annoyed how long it takes. Just enjoy watching the color spill onto the page. and try not to obsess over every flaw because there are millions of flaws, but that's part of how the journey goes. It's just part of it. It's okay. It's okay to have flaws. Ooh, I'm pretty pleased with how this one turned out. I like the simplicity of the white. I like the shading. That green makes it really look like grass and flowers. This one turned out really successful. I think way more petals makes it more exciting. Thanks for watching, guys. What do you think? Have you tried this pattern yet? If you would like more details, I've got a slower explanation of how to do it in another video at the very beginning. Give it a try. It's kind of easy. Once you get the idea, you can add it anywhere, and it doesn't actually have to be a continual loop like the center. But this is it. Thank you all for watching.